introduce us. Hello, thank you for coming.
Wake up.
Yeah. So, I'm Jonathan, this is Bruce. We're going to each read a little something of our own and each read a little something of one another's. And I don't know what order to do that in.
You better start.
I'll start. I'm going to read this Warhol thing first. So this is, we were talking about what to do in a museum, and this is something I just wrote for this catalog of Andy Warhol's art that was just auctioned by Christie's, and they commissioned something. They said I could write anything I wanted about Andy Warhol, but they just wanted to have it to be in the catalog. And so I wrote this very, very recently. They unlike a publisher, Christie's goes into print immediately. So it's called Andy Mirror Ball. I'll be your New York. It was Warhol's city. The loft kid and his friends were just living in it. With a painter dad and a bohemian socialite mom, living as artist in residence in an illegal loft on West Broadway when he was born in '64, and with his own aspirations to be a painter or filmmaker, no other possibility existed. Warholism made an ambient influence, a pre-existing condition whose symptoms glinted everywhere by the time he'd wandered in. The city took the shape of a maze spangled by shifting reflections, Andy Mirror Ball hidden somewhere inside like a spider. That magazine, that t-shirt, that air of fatigue and amusement, of crushed innocence, hanging as a wary trace, a fume over the whole notion of the downtown, over the white walls of the gallery, painted over 1,000 times, over the back room of the club, which let you in but didn't let you all the way in. The incredible authority of rumor, that once upon a time anyone could go there and anything could happen, that he'd been assassinated, that Clockwork Orange had been filmed before Kubrick's version, that Blowjob existed but you couldn't see it, that anyone you might have heard of, let alone idolized, had traced a path to the center of the maze to be cast in that starlight, to be tested, to be tasted, to see for themselves what there wasn't there to see. Quote, I don't like to look in the mirror. There's nothing there to see. Brando, Dylan, Lou Reed, even teenage Jonathan Richman wandering up that stairwell. Others had come to be lost there, to echo into phantom refractions, to sign his name as their own, to become famous in a system of stars that shrugged at confirmation anywhere outside the factory's walls. A you can't fire me, I quit gesture across all extant mediums, from painting to the tabloids to the distant siren of Hollywood celluloid. I'll be your sticky fingers, the already scuffed album jacket of the record in the thrift shop window, yesterday's papers that had only just reached the loft kid today, the very title conveying an overload of sordid sexual implication you'd brush off if only you could get the song out of your head. That nearly accidental guile and charisma, which caught you up just because you'd taken a moment to glance in its direction. Then realized some of it was rubbed off on you and wouldn't necessarily be scrubbed away. These were the sticky fingers of complicity, yeah, of something squinting into your sensibility prematurely. And that any sensibility you might conjure was only a trace, a posthumous rehearsal of something harder glimpsed in the factory's diamond light. Dada, disco, punk, dystopian, queer, postmodern, each gesture helpless in that blank light, the undenial that he'd been thinking anything profound at all. I'll be your precog. Yet the loft kid could never have arrived at this party too late, since here was an art that simultaneously stopped time and predicted in scrupulous detail the entire future. How did it stop time? By resolutely decanting the too rapidly decaying human element from cultural memory. If soup cans or Brillo boxes never quit looking exactly like this, then our hungering, filthy bodies could crawl off and die, their job carried onward by these immaculate, permanent forms. If Elvis and Marilyn were deep-sixed in repetition and gold leaf, they'd never die. And one person gazing at them was probably as good as any other. It's nothing personal. The product was a deodorant for our grubby desires, a candid and icy new variant, offering freedom from the burden and eventual disappointment of our individual longing in favor of a love unperspiringly plasticized. If you dress up like you're old when you're young, you'll never seem to age. In other words, here's a vision of style as the ignition key for starting up a comically pathetic time machine, one that can smoothly transport you into a future where you are, of course, dead. For Warhol, the future was utterly predictable because it had permanently collapsed. Ingrid Superstar representing no particular advance on Greta Garbo, but nothing like a retreat either. The present moment expanding in our voyeuristic attention span to encompass every human impulse until the only transactions left to select among are like or pay. The Loft kid suspected that the sole futurist to predict the deathless death now readily available on the internet was that science fiction writer known as Andy Warhol. People, this is a quote again, people are always putting it down as an invasion of privacy, but I think everyone should be bugged all the time, bugged and photographed. To ponder his artworks and utterances was to discover Andy Warhol's guide to survival under late capitalism, an index of methods for armoring the self by expunging the self. A private soul's trick of hiding in plain sight, then declaring itself clueless, a clueless but alluring mystery. That's to say, declaring itself a product. I'll be your human. The weird fact, in retrospect, was how totally Warhol turned the impact of his personality inside out. The leading edge the Loft kid encountered was all vacancy and subterfuge, just as any viewer's first impression of his artworks consisted of being flattened by a Mack truck of repetition, appropriation, and mechanization. Both personality and artworks presented a hard-edged, yet evasive blankness that threw you back on yourself for the consolation of outrage. Since Warhol was always bragging of his indecision, unoriginality, and blankness, you could never have the option of catching him at anything. His abysmal shrug, worn like a cloak of invisibility, he seemed perfectly capable of vacating his human presence during his lifetime, which led the casual viewer to the error that he actually effaced himself from his artworks. In truth, the harder you look at Warhol, the more continuity is revealed between the blotted line of his earliest drawings and the silkscreen slippages and washes of color, between the films and the interviews and the media presence, that slippery ghost in a slipping wig who hovered through episodes of Love Boat and across page 6. Every enunciation seemed to confess the same tremulous, yearning hand. Having turned his living days on earth into a joke about lifelessness, his gestural gifts lurked in the conceptual shadows. Now, so many years since his death, Warhol seems more alive than ever, his personality completely unhidden. What revealed itself in particular was the tenderness, loneliness, and terror he never seemed to do anything but brandish. Nothing was hidden, for there was nothing to hide. The reluctant fame hound whose awkward shyness enshrined itself in a long meditation on what a disaster it could be to have a personality in the first place. Not only is the album Songs for Drella, by protégés Lou Reed and John Cale, a worthy soundtrack to the terrifying vortex of Warhol's printed diaries, it can help a listener understand that the Velvet Underground had already been working on a sympathetic posthumous portrait of their sponsor from the very beginning, in I'll Be Your Mirror, or The Black Angel's Death Song. Some lyrics from that are, the myriad choices of his fate set themselves out upon a plate for him to choose what he had to lose. When Andy Mirrorball begged us to look or to let him look, it added up to the same thing, an attempt to armor himself in rebounding glances, but not to let any single glance cut too deeply. What he constructed around his human self, constructed out of artworks and celebrity apparatus and out of other human beings, including his superstars and his audience, was nothing more or less than an attempt at a functional language for the description of himself. You factory, me Warhol. That's to say, Andy Warhol was, from the first and to the end, like Tarzan, a kind of feral child in the jungle of the 20th century. Okay. Bruce, you're on.
I'll be your precog. Okay. This is from a book, a novel of mine, and this is about a woman who's a photographer, but she can't figure out how to make an impression on the world. So she meets, by chance, a famous photographer who's now dead named Helmut Newton. Helmut Newton was known for the erotic pictures he took, kind of in a sadomasochistic theme of beautiful Amazonian women. And he's going to give her career advice now, which may strike one as cynical, but it was practical to me. One day, she invites him for a serious coffee. A curious man, he immediately accepts. She's nervous. It's hard for her. She tells him that she's thinking about taking pictures again. She's been on hiatus. He winces, then sees the depth of her terror and desire. She dares to tell him her problem. I have no real point of view, she says. Then you weren't kidding, he says. A pause, his eyes rabidly twinkling. That was what you said the first time we met. Her lip wriggles as she speaks of her travails. She bears all, even tells him about the professor, her ex-husband. She says she has the feeling that this is it for her. She's 41 now. Either she makes her mark or fades away. I am old. No, he says, I am old. He has a thick German accent, but I won't bother to do that. She begs him to be serious. Here's what he said. I understand, dearest. I understand. You can't think I don't understand, can you? No, I know. I'm glad you had the guts to tell me what you did. It takes guts, I know. Not easy, not easy. It is never easy. It isn't supposed to be. Now you've got this off your chest, but you're open to advice, no? That is why you shared these things with me, yes? Because there is something you can do about this existential difficulty. This lack of a point of view, she said. Do you know what you need, Jackie dear? You need to be banned. You need to create such a scandal that everyone knows your name, to make something truly disturbing, to make your own Sacre du Printemps, your rite of spring, to cause a commotion, understood? You need to make art for the FBI, art that forces the police to raid the gallery that was brave enough to exhibit the forbidden fruits of Jacques Crel. My dearest Jacqueline, listen to what I am telling you. You need to be threatened with prosecution and jail. You must know the work of Nan Golden? Of course. I really am very fond of Nan. She has a marvelous gift. Realism is not my thing. There is enough of it in everyday life. I spend my days trying to get away from it, but Nan really is very good at what she does. Do you know the photo of the belly dancing kids? Have you seen her picture of the little girl? The little girl in the picture is about 4, no? She bends to show her little chat, bare as only a 4-year-old vulva can be. All very playful, very innocent. Ha! Well, Nan is one of those people who knows just what they are doing. I am like that as well, or I like to think so. Here is where Elton John enters the picture, so to speak. Now, you must know I adore Elton. He is absolutely adorable. June and I got very close to him, and my God, the voice, the music, he has the whole package. It's true he doesn't collect my work, but I forgive him. He doesn't want pictures of leather and tits and women holding whips on the wall. Well, maybe leather. Understood. I have no problems with it. Elton owns a few hundred of her pictures, I believe. Nan's, more or less. Some place in England wanted to show her work. Not a big place. I think it may even have been outside of London. Being the patron of the arts that he is, Elton graciously loaned 150 images to wherever, to the venue. And of course there was the usual complaint. Someone didn't like the little vulva. You see, the little vulva did its job. The little vulva works very well. The gendarmes say they received a complaint, and in came the stormtroopers to pry the offending photograph off the wall. They took a few others with them, too. A bare vulva leaves a bare wall. Now this photo of which I speak has quite a spread. Nan was very thorough. You can see the tiny pisser, even the darling shithole. Well, as you can imagine, an uproar ensued. You have the fascists on one side and the libertines on the other. It's always the same, no? The fascists shout, "Pornography!" Isn't it what they always say? I'm telling you, it's true. The artist must be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Oh, how they rail, Jacqueline. And the libertines, they say, these are innocent portraits. To suppress them will have they always are using this phrase, chilling effect on terrestrial life as we know it. Chilling effect. They love that phrase. It rolls trippingly off the libertines' tongue. Oh, the two parties put on quite a show. And I don't need to tell you what happened, Jacqueline, do I? You can guess. There was no prosecution. The Sturm und Drang came and went like a summer storm. But the price of those pictures, they went through the roof. I'm telling you, Cher, England is always a wonderful place for ground zero because these tempests are closely watched by Americans, American media, like BBC costume dramas slowly making their way to the shores of American television. Those English accents lend credence. They class it up. Oh, how the Brits can class up bare vulvas and shitholes. Ha! Saatchi is always a wonderful venue to have your ground zero. There was a skirmish in 2001. Nan again. The woman is indefatigable. The Bobbies insisted the gallery remove the offending images. Tout sweet. Saatchi refused. Golden triumphed. And the prices? Up and up and up. Up and away. Please listen, Jackie dearest, because I am being utterly serious. David Hamilton, I bow my head to the master, but now I speak of peripubescence, which is a littered field. You'd have no chance there, no chance at all. And besides, there's no time. You would have to twiddle your twat waiting for Jerry Lynn to grow up. Where did you get this name, Jerry Lynn, for your child? It's horrid. Hamilton, I've known him for years. He lives in Saint-Tropez. Peripubescence has been good to him, what they call the sweet cusp of pubescence. For me, it is intensely boring. I call it the blah lagoon. Hamilton once had a stranglehold, an absolute monopoly of the market. 11-year-old blondes with nipples a bit too large for their tiny chests, most of them viewed through linen curtains nonetheless. What can one say? It's nice work if you can get it. Ha ha. Hamilton is absurd, but attention must be paid. His work is a litigation perennial. Every year somewhere in the world, there's a fuss like clockwork. The man doesn't need to lift a finger for a diaphanous curtain, doesn't even have to leave his balcony. David is the king of the landmark ruling. You are always in need of the landmark ruling, darling. A landmark ruling in the UK declared his work indecent, which of course it is, but for aesthetical reasons. It was so far-reaching that anyone who had his books displayed on their coffee tables, that's a lot of coffee tables, if you had the master's book in the privacy of your own home, you were at risk of arrest. The Bobbies went on a rampage, clearing the bookstore shelves. David released one of those statements. Oh, that you must do as well, the released statement. What they call a measured statement of protest released through one's spokesperson. We shall find you a spokesperson, my dear Jacqueline. Others soon got wise. Frankly, I don't know what took them so long. Jock Sturgis, his pictures were terrible, terribly banal, in some ways far worse than David's, because they aspired to art. He puts the kids on the beach. The beach! The mind staggers at the audacious paucity of imagination. Better they be posed reading a book through damn Victorian curtains than be lollygaggling on the beach. They're just nudies. You've seen nudist colony magazines? With the occasional bush thrown in to give absolution to anyone who may have had a seizure of guilt when they found themselves lingering over the delicate line-drawn Y of the hairless pubis at rest. Or he throws in a mom. You know, if mom's in the shot, she must have approved. That way you get the good housekeeping seal. Very clever. Wouldn't you like the good housekeeping seal, Cher? There's Larry Clark, a real pervert, not a fake one like myself. But let's not talk about Mr. Clark. Frankly, I'm not too interested in exploring the endless mystery of unwashed 13-year-old boys, particularly not when they're shooting up. Cher Jacqueline, you will someday have a book of your own. We must find a title for it. One must always pay attention to the titles. They're very important. The Age of Innocence, that's David, of course, El Maestro. The Last Days of Summer, Sturgis. A wonderful title, I have to say. I'll help you with that. You see, the title must let the people know what you're up to, what it's all about. They went after Sturgis. Was it 91? In San Francisco, of all places, they went completely berserk. It was a crusade. They were carrying torches, and yet, can you guess what's coming, my dearest? The grand jury has refused to indict. I am telling you, the grand jury always... That's money in the bank. They're First Amendment whores. But it doesn't really matter because that storied, fierce debate will follow, and if you're lucky, a media firestorm. Jackie, there's one thing that is guaranteed. People will know your name. Your supporters will invoke Caravaggio and Degas. There'll be a sidebar editorials in the Times on Nabokov and Charles Dodgson, chilling effects, landmark rulings, the sound and fury of grand juries signifying nothing but sales, sales, sales.
So now Bruce and I are going to read a bit of one another's work. I've picked something for him, but I'll go first.
Yeah.
Do I know where to start and leave off?
Yeah, you might tell him it's Brad Pitt gets the head injury and gets better, and then goes on the Jay Leno Show.
Okay, so there, great. So, So think of Brad Pitt having a terrible, terrible, tragic head injury, and then recovering, and this is his return to the public eye on Jay Leno, and this is a chapter called The Leno Show. The band plays the Supertramp theme from World Without End as he comes out. The second time we've spoken of Supertramp today. The band plays the Supertramp theme from World Without End as he comes out, the longest ovation in Leno's history. For the next 5 minutes, hoots, catcalls, coughs, and whatnot as the mob cathects, then settles upon its collective seat. Wow, says Jay. I cannot tell you how happy I am, how happy the world is that you're back. Tsunamis then, tidewaters of applause. Kit humbly smiles and begins to respond, forced to give up as the audience dam breaks. Awash again. Second longest ovation in Leno's history. Kit's jaw is clenched, his eyes wet, body surfing the no silence. Jay, too, wipes away a tear. I'm getting very emotional, he says, sweetly shaking that ridiculous-sized chin. Slightly embarrassed or playing at such. Now and then it's okay to be unmanly. Kit smiles and says nothing. Stop starts, charmingly stymied. Audience charmed too, way, way on his side. Still, though, he hasn't said a word, and they're kind of nervous about that. How will he sound? All retardy? Time now overdue for that first sentence moment, utterance to be reported the next day, the quip heard round the world, that one giant leap for mankind moment. Finally, after a great sigh, it comes. What a long, strange trip it's been. Laughter, tears, ovation, the sentiment funny and true, and he sounds normal, just like they knew he would, more than anyone could have dreamed or hoped for. Kiki had 6 writers spend 2 weeks brainstorming. Then Sella heard the Grateful Dead song on the radio. It was her suggestion. Kiki agreed. The writers' picks were too jokey. This, the most real. The crowd deftly replays his words in their heads, picking them clean for slurs, impediments, I am Sam type aftershocks. Nothing. The collective eye had already searched for skull craters beneath the chic, barely grown out buzz cut. None visible. I have just one thing to ask, says Kit. They hang on his words. You could hear a pin drop. Because people worry about my mental faculties. All anxiously hold their breath. He's going to say something serious. You are David Letterman, aren't you? Hilarity! Foot-stomping ovation. The kid stays in the picture. Now, Jay and Kit ease into the familiar, comforting shuck and jive. So what was it like? How does it feel to be back? Shtick. Ice-breaky stuff to give guest and host, audience too, their sea legs. Jay says, now, one thing that people out there may or may not know is that there was an irony connected to this whole event. Event? You mean when I got hit on the head? Laughter. A man of the people, regular guy, deserving, courageous. Yes, says Jay. Mind if we talk about it? That's why I'm here. But you talk, I'll listen. Laughter. Because, man, I am tired. Applause. Whoop whoops. Jay says, okay, that's fair. Fair deal. I just flew in from rehab, says Kit, on a roll, and boy, is my mind tired. Laughter, tidewater ripple, tsunami applause. Carrie Fisher wrote that for me. Jay cracks up. Kit adds, and I'm bleeped nervous. With the unexpected obscenity, Leno joyfully loses it. The crackling realness of the moment, rapture from the crowd. Then a lady's voice from the audience, we love you, Kit. Jay sternly, have that woman escorted from the studio and immediately taken to Mr. Lightfoot's hotel room. Laughter, whistles, catcalls, applause. A man's voice from the audience, I love you, Kit. Jay and his chin lose it again. Giddiness, contagion, punch-drunk love, admiration for the conquering hero's return. Jay gently admonishes the audience like the old friends they are. All right, calm down now. Back to his guest. And I want to talk about the play. True West, what a triumph. Applause begins. Jay deftly thwarts another prolonged salvo by continuing. But, and this fascinates me, you were preparing to do a film when you got hit on the head. Kit nods matter-of-factly. Darren Aronofsky, wonderful director. Now, the irony is you were actually going to portray a character who was very much like you, a famous movie actor who was normal, at least relatively, until he was involved in an automobile accident that rendered him with, awkward for Jay now, well, not diminished capacity, but I guess what you'd call a kind of neurological brain damage, says Kit tersely. The audience laughs, though slightly discomfited. Oops, says Kit, sorry to be politically incorrect. In a nanosecond, sharks to blood, the mob registers possible retard omit of Lee from politically. Politically incorrect. I misread that. Sorry to be political incorrect. In a nanosecond, sharks to blood, the mob registers possible retard omit of Lee from politically. Politically incorrect, says Kit, self-correcting without fanfare. I just corrected a reading about a correction. Self-correcting without fanfare, and all is well again, just a case of nerves. Come on, Kit says boisterously, throwing down a challenge to the crowd. You can say it. Brain damage. Raises his arms like a conductor while Jay bashfully shakes his head at the mischief-making. The audience reverberates, brain damage. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Applause, ovation. They are his.
Okay. This is from Jonathan's book, The Ecstasy of Influence. This is called Children with Hangovers. The children with hangovers are taking out the garbage. I watch from above as they lurch out of the basement apartment. Their garbage is in brown paper sacks, the kind you have to request to be given anymore at the grocery checkout. And paper sacks are rotten and soggy, splitting like tomatoes. The children with hangovers stagger out, cradling the sacks, hoping to keep them from bursting before reaching the curb. They slump them in a heap in the street, coming away with fingers stained with salad dressing and coffee grounds. Then they turn back to the apartment, squinting groggily in the morning sun. It is early for the children with hangovers. The man next door stands out on the curb beside his neatly knotted green plastic garbage bags, scowling at the children with hangovers. I am sure he can hear the bass thrum of their music through the walls, as I can hear it up here on the top floor of the house, pulsing clear through the apartment between. I am sure that, like me, the man next door does not understand how the children with hangovers can keep it up. The man next door has 5 flagpoles. He displays 3 at all times: an ordinary flag, a rattlesnake coiled above the words, "Don't tread on me," and a POW MIA flag with crossed sabers on a black field, prisoner of war missing in action. On the 4th pole, he shows a flag for every season, an Easter flag with pink stripes and bunnies for stars, a scary black and orange Halloween flag, a Valentine's flag, a Thanksgiving flag, and so forth. The 5th pole is always bare, ready for some crisis, or affiliation not yet born. The recycling trucks come before the garbage trucks, but no one has left anything for the recycling men, not the man next door, or the children with hangovers, or the man in the apartment between, or me. The postwoman comes next, and as always, she comes up the stoop and pushes a single fat bundle of mail bound with a rubber band through my slot. Then, as she has done lately, she goes down the stoop and rings the bell for the basement apartment. Though she's left all the mail for the house upstairs, she rings the bell of the children with hangovers, and when they come to the door, the postwoman goes inside. Often, when I go down to sort out the mail, I run into the man who lives in the apartment between, just as he is coming in from his night shift driving a taxi in the city. He drives all night and early morning and returns to sleep through the late mornings and afternoons and early evenings, and then he awakens again near nightfall. I hear his alarm clock buzz at 8 or 9. Then he begins drinking and cursing and readying himself for his shift, which begins after midnight. He continues to drink in the taxicab as well, and by the time he returns in the mornings, he is usually looking as bad as the children with hangovers or worse. When I run into him in the hall, I offer him his mail, and then his hands are too full, with his bottle and his pistol, which he keeps under his seat while he drives his cab. He asks me to hold his pistol while he looks at the mail I've handed him, then finds his keys and unlocks his apartment door. Once his door is opened, he reclaims his pistol and goes inside. The mail for the children with hangovers I bring upstairs into my apartment. I live in fear of hailing a cab one night in the city and finding that my driver is the man from the apartment between. I never see the postwoman leave the basement apartment, but she must at some point go and resume her rounds. I just never see her go. This evening, the children with hangovers build a bonfire in the backyard. Perhaps this is why their bags of garbage are so exclusively oily and damp. They have been hoarding their paper and cardboard for the bonfire. The bonfire is many feet around and grows to a quite impressive height. I can see magazines burning, centerfolds, glossy paper the color of flesh wrinkling in the blaze. Soon I see they have begun stacking broken chairs and shelving and other items, plastic and ceramic vessels from their kitchen, onto the fire. The children with hangovers dance, laughing in a circle around the fire, with bottles in their hands. They light cigars and smoke them as they dance and sing around the fire. The postwoman is there with them in the yard, dancing too. I don't know whether she's been in their apartment all day or whether she came back. I hope she has not burned the mail. The alarm clock of the man in the apartment between buzzes while I am looking out the back window at the tower of flame, which rises well above the heads of the children with hangovers now. The mail for the children with hangovers is all collection notices and credit card offers, and I sort through it, making 2 piles: collection notices, credit card offers. I have 2 large piles. The only mail the children with hangovers will accept are the free gifts which sometimes arrive, videotapes or CDs or CD-ROMs which I bring downstairs and leave at their door. The children with hangovers have never invited me inside. I think the children with hangovers are fucking the postwoman. The garbage has not been picked up from the front curb. Today may be an obscure garbage holiday, a patriotic or religious civic occasion nobody can keep track of, not even the man next door. The smoke from the bonfire curls through my back windows, so I shut them. The children with hangovers have begun giving out my phone number when bill collectors call. I handle these calls for them, explaining just as well as I can, trying to spare any misunderstanding. The collectors rant and fume on the line. I am patient with them, hearing them out, soothing them exactly as one would an infant. This sometimes takes hours, but I've decided it's the least I can do.
I don't know, we said we would be here till 4. We might have a few minutes to answer questions. Do you want to do that? Sure. If there are any questions about what we just did.
Or any protests.
Or any protests, yeah. If you want to call those gendarmes. Or not. A museum might not be the right place for questions.
Why? Why did you
Oh, yes. Well, we felt this was a place where we could do something we wouldn't get to do in another place. And so I thought reading each other's stuff would be interesting. It doesn't have a more satisfying answer than that.
How does it feel to hear Bruce read your work and Bruce to hear Jonathan?
It was fun to read his work. It was good.
Is there a disconnect, or does it just seem odd?
Well, I think I didn't give myself a fair chance to make the comparison because I had him read something I've never read aloud, and I've never even thought about reading aloud, but I was looking for something that would surprise him or interest him, and I landed on this little piece.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the part that I...
No, but it was very readable. You know?
Yeah, it was very readable.
It's just funny. I forget that I wrote what he was reading, and while I'm reading what he wrote, I'm thinking, well, I could have written that. It's just, it's the narrative words, you know. You think, why did I get into this field? You know, I have a certain facility for it, but then you start to wonder, well, how much of a facility, and ultimately, what difference does it make? And should there just be one universal text? You know, this is my mind. Because I'm, you know, sort of insane. And then while I was reading my thing, I was thinking, oh my God, is this too obscene? And I suddenly had to start to censor.
There was something you skipped.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you think that this space wouldn't be appropriate for what you skipped?
Well, it's not that appropriate. This particular book is so extreme, and I think I've been a little bit pilloried for that, and so suddenly I became Victorian. You know what I mean? It wasn't that the dear children would be able to. And in my mind, there were thoughts of Jonathan pressing a hidden button that summons campus police.
You should have given that part to me, and I'd have read it.
All right,
Yeah.
next time.
I don't know, maybe that's great. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.